Okay, I'm lost. All I see is castle. There's a castle here, castle there, castle there. Oh, look, it's a party! Is it a napping party? Oh God. Oh, I'll ask that guy. Hey, buddy, do you know how to get to the main road?
Ilyena, where are you?
No, I don't know where your wife is. I think your wife is right. I don't know. I have not seen your wife. So do you know how to get to the main road?
Where are you, my wife?
Okay, no, I don't know where she is, but if I do find her, I think she's over there, a little bit over there, a little bit over there. Was this ceiling always red? Well, I think I see a guy coming, so I am going to go this way. I'll find the main road. Thank you, though.
Lord of the Morning, I have come for you.
The wheel of time turns, ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten, when the age that gave it birth comes again. Whew, sorry about that. There was some traffic on the road. I guess a mountain blew up or something. Yes. Wait a second, this isn't my old set. Where's the one bookshelf and terrible lighting? Well, things change. Much like in epic fantasy, things have to progress as the seasons change, so does the environment. Hello everyone, welcome to Middle Fantasy, I'm Zack, and to really kick off the new set and kind of new things that we're doing here, I might as well talk about the Wheel of Time. Now what can I say about the Wheel of Time? It is a book series that personally for me, I've been super intimidated to read. I was kind of doing a vlog-like thing, but like all good things, I have very little when it comes to self-control, so I was plowing through the book faster than I could make those videos, so I decided we'll just make these their own separate videos, one part review and one part discussion, and really talk about my initial thoughts of the series. When it comes to me, I've had this copy since my 17th birthday. I remember getting it as a birthday present, and I read it, and I didn't like it, but I kept trying and trying again, because for me, The Wheel of Time is a book series that for me personally is so special, because every time I hear people talking about it, they're just having so much fun. Well, here it is, and we're going to be talking about the first book, The Eye of the World, written by Robert Jordan. So why don't we begin? The Eye of the World is such a great introduction to the Wheel of Time, and we're going to get into why I think it works so well as things that I didn't like about this book. But more importantly, we're going to be talking about what makes a good introduction to a series. Now, the basic plot of the story is we follow Rand al'Thor and a few of his friends who are being pursued by the Dark Lord. We don't know why, but it turns out that things are going really weird for them because there's these creatures named Trollocs that are pursuing them, as well as other beasties that bump in the night. And it's up to Rand, his friends, a magic user named Moraine, and her warder Lan to get them to safety. It's a race against time as well as continents. And for me, I like this. I think this really does kick off this whole adventure, and it really goes very proactive very quickly. The first time that I read this book, I was not used to kind of the prose and kind of the slow buildup, but this time through and really reading it, Robert Jordan's really setting a picture that I really do enjoy, especially when it comes to the buildup and understanding these characters. Now, I'll have to say this, and I know people will always be like, they're gonna roll their eyes, I already know. This book does remind me a little bit of The Lord of the Rings. I'll just have a ticker down here every time I say it. It might be a lot. But going into this book, I try to get out of the mindset that it's Lord of the Rings. I think personally, this single line of text right here has done more damage to the book series than anything, because it already puts into your head it's going to be Tolkien-esque. Jordan has come to dominate the world that Tolkien began to reveal. I do think Robert Jordan does take some inspirations from Tolkien in many ways, but it's more of the world building than just the whole plot. And we're going to talk about this really quickly. I think there's also parallels between Dune and Frank Herbert and The Wheel of Time, especially when it comes to the magic users of the Aes Sedai and the Bene Gesserit. But I feel like when it comes to this story, if you're going into it thinking it's a Tolkien ripoff, it really isn't. You have to keep in mind that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the early 90s where fantasy is expected to be like Tolkien in many ways, and that's just a fact, especially when it comes to fantasy at this time. Go back and read stuff from the late 80s, early 90s. They're all going to be very similar, and The Wheel of Time, or at least with The Eye of the World, has no exception to it, but it branches off just enough where it's restrained in many ways, And for me, I kind of like this, especially when it comes to this world where it's vast and mysterious, and also at the exact same time, it has a lot of history to it. You're really getting into a brand new world. So I'm going to try not to compare it to the Lord of the Rings. Yes, there's a few plot elements, but I think that's just, either an editor's note in the beginning or just how you start an adventure, because you only have so many ways of telling a story in an adventure. You have to have the band of people, they have to be pursued, and there has to be consequences to their actions. And we see this quite a lot in the story. Now we might as well get into the prose of the book. For me, I love the characters. Robert Jordan does such an amazing job with all of his characters. Every single one of them is distinct. Everyone has a personality. Everyone has a conflict. And by the end of the story, you know every single one of them, compared to other stories where sometimes you're like, this person's here because they need more characters into the roster. But here, everyone works. You have empathy for them. And I find that to be the strongest thing when it comes to Robert Jordan, is kind of his characters, and also they all feel believable, especially in this ludicrous adventure that they're going on, where sometimes they're hunted to the verge of paranoia, where other times they're celebrating and having a triumph of just, surviving another day. And for me, I personally love that about the story. For me, the one thing that I was noticing quite a lot this time through is actually the descriptions in the prose. They are so top-notch in many ways, and also we'll talk about why this is kind of a con. But what I like about it is that when it comes to him describing his world building, and the world itself is fabulous. I kind of love things when he talks about a lot of like the traveling people, the towns they stay at, kind of the customs and cultures of each town and how they're all different, rather than ye olde fantasy village. Yes, there's a lot of medieval elements to this, but that isn't the case. I feel like I'm not in medieval Europe, but rather I am in a place that feels correct in many ways. It feels like it's the wheel of time, rather than, oh, this is England during the plague. Oh no. Like, there's still like some Middle English, but it's not enough where it's distracting. Like, you're not going to see pages, knights, squires, and everything in between. Yeah, they kind of pop up a little bit, but it's not kind of the main focus of the story. The main focus of the story is the adventure. Now, the other thing that I absolutely love about the story, and I'm going to be honest about this, and I hate fight scenes. I usually skip fight scenes, but all the fight scenes in The Eye of the World are so good. Like, for me, it's all about spatial awareness and description and the stakes. Robert Jordan does such an amazing job. I was just hooked on them, because I usually skip them because it's either they win or they lose. For me, it's always characters talking in that type of conflict rather than a person swinging a sword, because for me, what makes a bad fight scene is, again, what I just talked about, spatial awareness and the stakes. If there's no stakes, what's the point of reading it? As well as when it comes to spatial awareness, when you're thinking of something so visual as two people swinging hunks of metal at each other, it won't come across well on the page, but it does come across well on the screen when you have things like blocking and you can actually see what's happening and have a visualization. Whereas when it's your mind, you kind of scatter, it doesn't quite work. Here, there's weight to every single act of violence in here, as well as when it comes to the magic, it has weight to it. I noticed this quite a bit when it comes to authors that have either served in the military or have seen combat in one way, shape, or form, is that they're really good at writing fight scenes. Robert Jordan did serve in Vietnam. I did some research in this, and this kind of explains a lot of it. And it really is, he really describes fight scenes in a way where I can't really describe it without you reading it, and how it really does work and you understand everything. I think that's his greatest talent. And the last thing I'll talk about is the magic. I love the magic of this world. The source of magic is so much fun. I love that it has its own rules, but also it's in an interesting way where it doesn't feel like, magic can solve everything, where magic does have a price to pay, especially if you're a men version of the magic system, because that version got tainted. I gotta say this, I think the word taint is really funny. I'm sure that's probably like a meme. I already can feel it coming. But when it comes to this magic, it reminds me a lot of the Bene Gesserit in Dune, whereas, it's more of the women who have all the power, and men, if they try, they usually die. But here, it's a little different, because the men's side is corrupted in a way. If they use the magic, they'll eventually go insane, and horrible things will happen. And we do see what happens at this with the prologue, which really sets up the, the consequences of what this magic is. And for me, I love this magic. I think it's so perfect. And I kind of love that when it comes down to it, the magic in this does have consequences. And I love that so, so much. We might as well talk about the cons. Now, when it comes to the cons in this book, I do have quite a few. The first one is that This book does feel very tropey at times. I don't know if that's because it's the early 90s or Robert Jordan was taking inspirations a little too much, but I was noticing a lot of parallels a bit in kind of the conflicts of certain elements of it, especially when it comes to, when I talk about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it went up one. Yeah. But when you see that, there's kind of the conflict of, you do follow the hero's journey in many ways. This is like the Joseph Campbell thing. We can go from a sheep herder or a moisture farmer with Luke Skywalker, or you can go to, pretty much any person that's like a farmer that has dreams and aspirations, and they have to, their quiet little town is attacked in some way, shape, or form, and their idea of normalcy is thrown out the effing window. You see that's here, and especially when it comes to this story where it feels like the hero's journey, like you can actually see the circle. Wait a second, is it a circle or a wheel? So be prepared for when you're reading this that there's a few tropes, especially when it comes to certain characters. You have the staunch warrior that is a man of few words. You have kind of the angry, grumpy old man who's there because he's kind of forced to be there. And then you have the person that's dreaming better things, but yet he resists the call in many ways. And I want to say that's a con of the book, but also at the exact same time, it's actually kind of refreshing to see it this way and seeing how it's a classic battle of good versus evil. I find that to be so much fun. But if you go in thinking that it's just going to be tropes, you're not going to have a fun time because the tropes are there. But if I'm going to use a Ryan Johnson term, they're subverted in a way where when you actually read the story, they fit in a natural way rather than we're here because, you need to have conflict and no one's saying things to each other. Some of them work while other ones kind of fall flat, and I don't hate that. The biggest problem that I had with this book, as much as I said the prose and descriptions are good, yeah, some of them are really, really bad. I feel like there's so much that if you cut a bunch of the prose out, this book would actually be a lot shorter. And I'd be calling myself a hypocrite because, the Name of the Wind is just all prose. It's almost poetry on page. But here, it's a little different because I feel like a lot of it is just extending the word count in many ways. Like the first couple chapters of this almost seem like parody because Robert Jordan won't go into just straight up, I'm going to explain everything. I'm going to explain the clothes, the foods, the customs, before I even talk about the character's actual name, and there's going to be 5,000 of them. So better take notes, everyone. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I actually have a notebook for this because I was doing a little video series off this, so I do have notes, but to a lot of people, this might seem confusing at times, though luckily there is a beautiful glossary in the back of the book, which isn't really spoilery. It's good to read that, especially when you're confused on certain terms or things don't make sense. You can go back there, read it and understand, and then you'll really jump right back into the Wheel of Time and have a lot of fun. Now, overall, do I recommend this book? Yes, I think I really do. It's one of those where it's a good introduction to the world because for me, what makes a good introduction to first book in a series is it should hook you. It should really set up the series because I always consider the first book of any series that's long, the prologue. Just think of it as a 50,000, 60,000 word prologue, and you will go far, especially when it comes to this, where the setup, you're really just setting up the world. You're understanding the magic, you're understanding some of the geography, you're understanding the characters and the people in play, and you're understanding somewhat of the bad guy and what his stakes are. And here, you are understanding so much that for me, it's like a chef's kiss. And I think for me, when it comes down to one of the reasons why I didn't like it the first time was I was already kind of in this defeatist mindset. Like there's so many books, I'm not gonna have fun with this. And also at the exact same time, I wasn't used to reading books with this type of, prose and descriptions. But now as an adult and reading more fantasy, especially after doing this channel, it really does help. What did you all think of this book? Please don't spoil the rest of the series. Just what did you think of this story? What were your favorite parts? What were your favorite moments? And in the end, why don't we have a super fun time? Because this is so much fun to read these books and really get into middle fantasy and kind of find the middle ground between this genre of epic storytelling, but also just being goofy a little bit. Well, everyone, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing down below. Thank you all so much, and like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everyone. See ya.